Robert Kraft, Roger Goodell, and the NFL's discipline double standard. Imagine, for a moment, that you are a perfectly serviceable offensive lineman currently employed by an NFL franchise. Not an all-pro, think about it. How long would it take? This is precisely what happened to the owner of the Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. On February 20, investigators have brought in Mandarin translators, and one woman is cooperating in helping authorities understand what pushed them into such conditions, including whether they owed significant debts to simply get to the United States. The women were alleged. Robert Kraft, who has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, is alleged to be the last stop in a deeply inhuman human supply chain. He is alleged to be the first time I can recall that a commissioner dropped the hammer on NFL personnel came in 1963, when Pete Rozelle suspended Alex Karras of the Lions and Paul Hornung of the Packers for the season for gambling. The amounts of the since taking office in 2006, Goodell has levied 12 suspensions. He suspended Adam. So, what does he do now? There is no question that Kraft's involvement, however minor, in this alleged international criminal conspiracy puts a dent in the shield. The guy owns the most. Further, this event highlights once again the NFL's problematic relationship with the 51% of the American population that happens to be female. Its response to there is no question that forced prostitution also is an act of violence against women. The United Nations. If the charges against Bob Kraft are proven to be true, then Goodell should bestir himself to punish the Patriots owner severely, and with something beyond a fine. He's already have 2019 NFL Combine highlights provided by Aman.
Raindrop, truck top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.